Right, welcome to week 3 of EDT 530. I wanted to take a moment since we are going to be asynchronous to just kind of walk through the scope of this week's work and also make sure that I've updated in terms of what is due next week. So just going to do a quick overview here. The main focus of this week is to explore the various activities that are available in Moodle. And we're going to be doing that by initially breaking up into 2 groups. And within those groups, you're going to make use of a Moodle chat that I've set up so that you can collaborate with each other to figure out how you want to approach the glossary activity for the week. You will be dividing up within your group, deciding who's going to take which activities to take a closer look at, and creating a glossary post on our Moodle that is about that activity so that then we have a sort of a reference for the whole class to refer to for each of the activities. So that's the main thing this week. It does not have to happen synchronously. It is small group, but using the chat rooms, you should be able to communicate with each other without having to be there at exactly the same moment. The chat rooms should show you all of the messages that have been posted in the chat, even if you weren't in the room at the time. And then the making of the individual glossary entries is also going to be done on your own time. So this is designed to be mostly asynchronous, but it does have an element of collaboration in it as well, because I like to keep up those personal connections and to show how Moodle can be used collaboratively. So I'm just going to kind of step through the task to try to answer any questions ahead of time. As always, especially since this week is offline and asynchronous, if you do have questions or concerns, please be in touch with me, and I will do my best to answer them as quick as possible. So the way that the activity works this week is in week 3 of our class Moodle, there is an instruction page. And on that instruction page, it does kind of go through the specifics, but just to do an overview, you're going to be looking through the activities and creating a little quick reference guide using a Moodle glossary activity. And also, as I said, to do a little collaborative work even online. I've divided you up into 2 groups. One group has 3 people, one group has 4, and you will see at the bottom of this page and as well on the chat rooms in the Moodle who is in which group. The goal is for your group to create glossary entries for each of the items that you're assigned. The group with 4 people has been assigned 8 items, and the group with 3 people has been assigned 6. So in terms of a workload, that means roughly each person is developing 2 of these glossary entries, although your group may decide that you want to divide up the work in a different way. That is entirely up to you. The Moodle glossary entry itself is basically just going to give a quick overview of each item. So you'll give a basic description of the item. That should be no more than a sentence or 2. So this is just the very brief, this is what this activity does. Then you should go into a couple of the key settings. And the way that you would take a look at this is I suggest using your student Moodles and add an activity in, and then that'll let you see all of the settings and let you kind of go through and explore it. I suggest, with a lot of these activities, there are settings that you don't need to get into. Usually down lower on the list at the bottom of each activity page when you create it, there are settings that get a little bit more obscure. But mainly we're looking for the most important ones that usually have to do with actually setting the activity up for your students. Once you've taken a look at it, just give a quick, again, we're looking at 2 or 3 sentences at most. Having kind of looked at each activity, what do you think its strengths or weaknesses are? How would you see that particular activity being used in a student setting? Do you think it's one that students would respond to well? Anything that you sort of see. And as I say here, summarize your main thoughts. It's not a blog or a forum post. This activity is just a glossary entry. but just maybe if you see some things that stick out at you. And then if you wish, you can also, I've given you links earlier in the Moodle to Moodle's help pages. If you want to, and you find the help page for the activity that you're working on, you can also insert a link into the glossary entry that will take people to that page as well. Again, what we're trying to create here is a quick reference for the class to use of each of these activities. So anything you can help to provide would be awesome. As I said, how your group divides up the labor is up to you. Honestly, usually people just divide up and say, you take these two, you take those two. But if you want to be more layered with it, or if people want to collaborate more, some of the activities are more involved than others. So you might want to think about that a little bit too in terms of divvying up the workload. Some of them we've already seen in class, so you might have a little bit better idea of how they work, and others, of course, are brand new. So that's just, as your group is chatting within the chat room, maybe think a little bit about how you want to divide up the labor. So in terms of the steps, you see the groups below in terms of what topic each group is assigned. I've given you a chat room, and I will show you those in just a moment in the Moodle, but each group has a chat room. These chat rooms, obviously, you can be in the room with other people chatting at the same time, but I have also set them up so that if you log in after a chat has happened, you should be able to see the previous chat information. So it can also be an asynchronous conversation that goes back and forth. Use that chat room to figure out how you want to divide up the labor of doing the project. And then do your research on your activity. Go into your individual student Moodle, turn editing mode on, add the activity you've been assigned or which activities you've been assigned, and then just kind of play around with them a little bit. See what the settings are, see how it works when you create one. Take a look at the documentation in Moodle about the activity, so on. So kind of become the expert on your activity. And then finally, create your glossary post. There is a glossary activity on our Moodle page. You simply create a new entry, give the entry the name of the activity, and then fill in the rest of your glossary entry. I've given you a sample here for a fictional coffee maker activity. Moodle does not actually make coffee for you, sorry. But just to kind of show you the scope of what I'm looking for. So you have the name, you have your one-sentence summary of what the activity does. Then it goes through some of the main settings of the activity. Then a sentence or two or three just about sort of your view of the activity and where you think it might be useful or how it might work into your scope. And then if you want to put in a link to a Moodle help page or a documentation page so that people can click on it and go see what Moodle has to say. And then I've got the group assignments at the bottom. As I said, the first group, because they've got 4 people in them, I've given you 8 items. One of them, the folder, is actually on the resources list instead of the activities list. So if you're the one working on folder, make sure that you're looking in that side of the list as opposed to in activities. And then group 2 has 6 items to look at because you've got 3 members in your group. So that is the main activity. It does not need to happen tonight during class time, but if you are around and at least want to maybe touch base in the chat room, then that way you can at least have a plan as you head into the week in terms of who is doing which entries and can get started on that. And obviously you're certainly welcome to use the time we would have used in class tonight to work on this. It should be an activity that is easily doable in the 2-hour scope of what we would have had if we were meeting online as well, or meeting in person. So that's the overview. That page is here on our Moodle. The chat rooms themselves function just like a chat room. When you click on the chat room, you click enter the chat now, and that should then bring you into the chat page where you can see what has been posted and post your own bit of the chat. The other piece of it is the actual Moodle glossary. and that is also included here on our Moodle page. And I've recapped what you're supposed to put and given the sample glossary post here as well as a reminder. But you simply click on Add a New Entry, give the entry the title of the activity, and then in the body of the entry provide your information. Again, as we have discovered with some of the forum posts, it might be better or easier to create your post somewhere else in Word or something like that, and then simply copy and paste it in when you create your entry. So what we should end up with down here is a glossary that contains all 14 items and has information about all 14, and have gotten to the point where there's at least somebody in the class who has become more or less an expert on each of our activities as we move forward in the class. So that is the main activity to cover tonight's class. In terms of work for next week, the main focus over the next week, in addition to getting this glossary developed, is the main focus is on segmentation. So I've given you a chapter from the textbook I had mentioned on the first night. This is chapter 9, Applying the Segmenting and Pre-Training Principles. So this is all about dividing up a topic. I know several of you have had questions already with the Moodles about what are the units or the sections of the Moodle going to be. This segmenting chapter and segmenting information is going to tie directly into that. Is kind of getting a sense of, now that you have a topic that you're approaching, what are some of the strategies you can use to segment that topic up, and those segments are going to become the sections of your Moodle. So they're more along the lines of maybe a lesson or a particular concept within a lesson or within a unit. They are not fully developed units themselves. I know it can be a little confusing in Moodle because they use some different terminology for how those sections are broken up. But I would say think of it more as you've got a topic, and then you break down that topic into, 8 to 10 or so subtopics that each will have its own little Moodle section. And a subtopic could be a day's class, or it could even be just a part of a class. It's going to depend on the scope of your topic and the age of the students you're working with and so on. So for homework, just read the chapter. And then once you've read the chapter, we have phase 2 of our ID plan. Looks like everyone got their first phase of their ID plans posted last week, which was awesome. So this builds on that. It's 4 additional questions to answer. They are all part of the design phase of the plan. So you can just copy and paste these questions into the same Word document that you answered last week's questions in. It's going to ask about segmenting. How do you plan on dividing up your content? Then listing out the actual sections that you plan on using and giving a quick description, meaning like a sentence for each section, just to say what you plan on doing in each section. Pre-training is also a concept that's in the chapter for this week. So think a little bit about whether you want to incorporate any pre-training, sort of setting the stage for the learning that the students are going to do. And now that we also have developed our Moodle activities glossary, taking maybe a look at them and giving a little bit of thought as to which activities have stuck out at you as ones that you think might be particularly useful. So you can take a look through our glossary and take a look at what's available and start thinking about that. So this is still all just in the design phase. You're figuring out what your topic is, how you're going to divide that topic up, how you're going to pre-train if you're going to use that, a little bit about which activities you're going to use. You aren't actually creating the activities yet or any of the content. We're just coming up with our framework. So once you've answered the questions, create a forum post here just like you did last week. Only paste in these 4 questions answers though. If you've got everything in the Word document all in one place, just copy and paste the answer to these 4 questions into this week's forum post for review and for input. So that is the main part of the homework, to kind of bring it all together in your Moodles. Once you've completed all of this, you can start to create that structure. In other words, if you figured out that you need 11 sections or 9 sections, and you have an idea about what each of those sections is going to be, you could go in, maybe title each of the sections if you want to do that. If you want to throw a page resource into each section, just to maybe put in the one sentence summary of what that section is going to be. Again, we're not putting in any content to these sections yet. I want to have a chance to look over your frameworks first and to look over all of your topics and do some reflection on that. So this is just sort of continuing the work from last week of doing an initial setup on your Moodle, getting the sections set up, figuring out how many sections you need. I know I had a question also about the number of sections. I know in some of the paperwork it says 10 or 10 required. I can be a little flexible with that. That's sort of a target to aim for. One thing to keep in mind is that some of those sections are going to be taken up by things other than your content. The last section of your Moodle is going to be some kind of an assessment tool. So you don't have to really think of that as an instructional piece. You might have a section at the beginning that's more introductory or a pre-training kind of a thing. So, but roughly speaking, your main topic, think about dividing it up into somewhere in the neighborhood of, say, 7, 8, 9 sections or segments that you will then be developing as each segment of your Moodle. All right, so I think that is the overview for this week. The Moodle activity instructions are on the page. The chat rooms are set up and ready to go. The Moodle activity glossary is ready to go. You've got the training, segmentation and pre-training chapter to read for next week, and a few more questions to add to your ID plan. And as always, particularly because this is an asynchronous class, if you have questions, please contact me. Please be in touch so that we can make sure that everybody is on the same page. Expect next week that we will definitely be meeting again synchronously online, because I do want to make sure that everybody's together on all of this. And our main topic next week is going to be graphics and taking a look at something called the Gestalt principle when it comes to instructional graphics. All right, so that is what I've got for today. I will post, obviously, this video and all the instructions on the Moodle. And good luck, and let me know what you need to know as you go through the activities. Thank you all, and we will see you next week.